Welcome to People Doing Good for Others. Welcome to People Doing Good for Others, where we honor and celebrate and hold in the light those who are truly making significant contributions in our communities. I'm Gary York, and I'm grateful to be with you today, and we want to thank Wilkes Communications, RiverStreet Productions, and 100.9 WIFM for this sponsorship. Our featured guest today is Ms. Brooke Smith. She's a representative of a yearbook publishing company called Walsworth out of Missouri. She's a native of Wilkes County, a graduate of West Wilkes High School, also the University of North Carolina, where she majored in journalism and graphic design. And I'm so grateful that she's here today to tell us about the yearbook and why it's so important for our communities and schools. And good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary.
Brooke Smith.
Thank you for having me.
I met you through John Elledge,
Yes.
who's a dear friend, was at Wilkes Central.
Absolutely.
And through him, we got to talking about publishing and your name. And so you're here through the good graces of John Elledge.
Yes.
So
he's a dear friend
tell
to me
us
too.
about you growing up in Wilkes County and West Wilkes and some of those important things.
Okay, so I've lived here most of my life. My father and mother are both from here. My dad worked at Lowe's and they married, were high school sweethearts and have been married for 42 years, September. And my sister played basketball and was real big here, so she's been a coach up at Ash for several years and just moved. So she was the star of the sports and I was the writer. And so I did yearbook throughout my junior and senior year. And initially I was recruited by my teacher there, Tanya Childers.
Tanya Childers, tell us a little more about her.
So I took newspaper because I knew I wanted to be a writer of some kind, and she saw, I guess, talent or something in me and let me be the editor of my newspaper that sophomore semester. And then she started recruiting for yearbook and came into my Miss Green senior English class, or sophomore English class, and pulled me out, which I was grateful for because we were diagramming sentences. And I went into the hall with her and she said, "Would you like to be on yearbook next year?" And I was like, "Sure." I was planning on applying. And she said, "Well, I was thinking that maybe you could be editor your senior year and go ahead and be associate or assistant editor your junior year."
My goodness.
And so I was like, "Oh, wow, great, sure." And so that was a pretty defining moment for me because, I'm still doing this 20-some years later. But it gave me the opportunity to really plan out my senior book because I had 2 years to do it and then work under the editor that year. And that's when I realized, okay, journalism isn't necessarily just words too. I can design, I can take photojournalism and take on different roles. And that really led me to go into it at Carolina. So honestly, that was a
Tell us about writing, being a good writer, just a kind of layman's terms.
Yeah.
How do you get started? People out there listening or watching us today say, "Well, I've always wanted to write." Tell us about being a writer.
Well, I think people think, a writer is a novelist or a newspaper reporter, and there's so many different ways to write. So I wanted to be a novelist initially. So I would sit in my little closet when I was young writing stories and type. My grandmother bought me a typewriter and I would sit in there and type. It was before computers. And then I realized, okay, the people on the news are doing this. So then I decided maybe I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. Well, then I got to college and realized that was probably not what I needed to do. My accent's too thick, I think, for that. So I realized, okay, I worked for the Daily Tar Heel and did that for a bit.
Did you really?
I did. And then my group at Carolina started the Blue and White magazine. So I thought, I'll do layout for this and see if I like it. It's real similar to yearbook. So I worked on that for a while, did one semester on their yearbook. It wasn't like high school, it was more just plugging in pictures, so not the same. But then I realized this is what I'm good at, and I can write and design in magazine layout or whatever, not even realizing that yearbook was a career option. So yeah, there's all kinds of it. And then when I went to teach English, you know, you have your 5-paragraph essay, you're practicing for the SAT, but for a yearbook it's more personal. Like you want to get quotes and you want to find the stories for those kids, and that's journalism. I mean, that's what we want to read about in magazines and on the news. So if you've got that sort of ability to, you know, pull a story out of somebody and put it into words, then that's great. I mean, you can use that throughout life. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you came out of Carolina and became a teacher, right?
Oh, initially I started working at Valspar Paint. So I was graphic designer for the Lowe's account for them for almost 5 years.
Oh, okay.
So, and that was super fun because I got to go to photo shoots and pick colors and do the room shots and everything. But I drove to Huntersville every day from here, and that was just a lot. So I decided to go back and get my teaching license. And then I started teaching, I think it was December of '04. So I taught at West Wilkes for about 7 years, and then I moved to Orange High School for 3 before I started this job. But I did yearbook most of that time, and the company recruited me because I worked with Walsworth as an advisor too.
Okay. Ms. Smith, I want to talk about, again, John Elledge and the great role that he played there at Wilkes Central, and how you develop people, or, you know, help youngsters become things that they have no idea maybe a person could. I didn't know I could do that, and you bring the good out in people. So let's talk about your role. You know, what you do.
Well, obviously my advisors do the brunt of the work because they're there day to day. So John did that for 29 years, 29 books. I mean, that's incredible. That's really rare. So he was wonderful. But then I also work with all the other high schools in the county, and all of them have really talented kids that come in as sponges, just ready to learn. They want to do a good job. So for me, I'm able to train them. I'm able to go in and teach them, here's the way to design for a yearbook, here's the way to write, take pictures, put it all together in a theme package. And that's something that they won't learn, you know, anywhere else. But you see that. I joke to my daughter, like if you look at like Taylor Swift, for example, she's the best there is at theme. I mean, if you look at right now, she's got an album coming out this week, and she's branded that thing. Everything matches. And that's the way your book is. You want your cover and your inside to match everything, and any page you turn to, it looks like it's that book. I was at a school this week, and the advisor she said this, and I thought, that's exactly right. She said, we want, if a page falls out of this book in a library, you pick it up and you'll know exactly which book to put it back into. And that's exactly right. I was like, perfect way to say it. That's exactly what I mean. So you want it all to be a package deal, and that you can use in marketing, you can use in anything, you know. So they don't realize that at that age, how to do it. So that's one big thing is theme. And then just all the components of putting it together and meeting deadlines and learning to work as a team and selling ads. I mean, it's a business. Yes.
Ooh, my. Great.
Sometimes that's hard for teenagers.
Yeah.
So
you start with this company, and I know you were just able to pick up East Wilkes just last year.
This is my first year with her full time, yes.
Right. And you tell us about the initial meeting of a prospect, someone who might be interested in joining your company, the Walsworth way.
Okay.
Tell us about that.
Sure. Walsworth is a little different than some of our competitors because it's family owned. We're not publicly traded, and the Walsworth family is still with us. I mean, they're in charge of the company still, and it's going to continue that way as the grandson has just graduated college, so he'll be joining our company soon, I'm sure. But it's really a lot of a different atmosphere. It's not really business, it's more family. I was sick several years ago, and they actually sent me cards and flowers and knew me, and I'm going, out of all these schools that you print for, you know that I'm going through this, and that was really important to me that they knew me. You know, they cared that I was struggling, and they worked with me on my deadlines, and they sent people in to help me, and it was really nice. And I thought, well, if I'm going to ever work for a company, it's this one, because they care about it. But when I go into a prospect, honestly, it's pretty hard to get people to change, because
You told me that.
teachers are pretty loyal people, which I admire. I was a teacher. I'm a loyal person too, and I want my schools to also be loyal. But you don't want to go in and meet them in case something needs to change, whether it be, you know, there's a problem with the printing, or they want to go in a different direction, learn new things, or it's price, whatever. But every school is different. So we go through a 3-step process. So we go in initially and we meet them and say, you know, what's going on? What's up with your program, and how can I help you? So I just listen.
You say, what are you doing?
What are you doing? Yeah, tell me what it is. And I ask them questions, and I just sit back and listen. And then I'll come back and say, from what I see, here's how I can help you. And if we decide that that's something that they want to go forward, then we start talking about programs. We have a ton of different programs depending on what your needs are. But it's really hard to just go in and give somebody a price if you don't know what they need,
Right.
you know?
Okay.
So I like to it's really more about building relationships for me. It's not an enjoyable job unless you're going to see your friends every day, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Tell me about Dr. Brooks.
Oh, Dr. Brooks I've known since I was probably 7, 8 years old.
Really?
Yes. My sister played volleyball for him his first year teaching. So I went to the games and I knew him, and then he taught there when I was actually a student, and then he was my department head when I taught at West Wilkes, so we're really good friends. We're going lunch today. But he is just absolutely phenomenal at building that program and making money for it. Basically, he fundraises through their cards, and his priority is that those books are cheap enough everybody can get one, and they almost sell out every year. They do a wonderful book. And so I joke with him, we're a good team, because the two of us together, you know, it's pretty hard to beat, because I've did a ton of those, and so has he. And so we moved the book up from a size 8 this past year to a 9, so it's an inch bigger. So instead of 8 inches, and then it's taller.
Oh,
it's a 9-inch book.
Wow, I had no idea.
Well, his book was getting pretty thick. He sells a lot of ads, so it was over 350 pages, and it was kind of not working out. I was like, we need to heighten this.
What a great point for us. Thank you. So you go get a bigger book. Oh my goodness.
And it turned out beautifully. So, and he had such talented kids. I mean, all the kids in this county are really talented, but they're getting to the point where they're doing national competitions. And, you know, I pride myself on helping them. If that's something they want to do to enter contests, do it. Like Wilkes Central has one Gallery of Excellence pretty much every year that I've worked with them, and I know before. West Wilkes has. North has really had a beautiful book this year. They're doing awesome. We're working with the early college to make theirs even better, and East has an awesome idea too this year. So theirs is, they've already got their cover done. So we are really trying to make this county known for having beautiful books, and it's getting there.
Well, what an honor to have you with us today.
Well, thank you.
My goodness, I'm learning so much.
Not many people realize it's a real job.
Tell me about recruiting. I thought that was, I never would have thought that a yearbook sponsor, I didn't know that was part of, it's like recruiting athletes. You want to know.
Oh, like for my job?
Yeah, well, tell us about Jim Brooks recruiting folks to be on his staff of his yearbook.
Oh yeah, so one thing we've done in this county particularly that has helped so much is add honors credit to that class, which means if you're on the editorial staff, you're going to get honors credit. Because the kids in there are very concerned about their grade point average and where their placement is in their class, you know, for college. So that helps recruit, because if you need to take it full year and you're missing out on AP calculus or something, it's a disadvantage. So we built that, and I actually think you worked with Donna Cotton, Dr. Brooks
I know
did.
Donna.
Yeah.
And,
Donna was my mentor my first year I taught, so I absolutely love her.
Oh, I was really impressed with her, and her husband Don's been here too. Doug's been here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that she worked with him, and now pretty much all the schools do that in the high schools, and they're able to get kids that are really wanting to do this. It's not just an throwaway easy A class. It's a hard class. It's a business, but he's getting phenomenal kids. And so is Wilkes Central. They have a new sponsor over there, and she's already starting out really great. So basically what I started at West Wilkes was the application process, and it would be, okay, you apply, you do a project, you come in, you have to have the teachers recommend you. I always felt that if you couldn't get along with your other teachers.
So you started that recruitment process?
Before me they did, but I changed it a little.
Applying?
So, yes.
Oh my word.
Yeah, and we built it. By the time I left, I had probably 60 to 70 kids apply and picked maybe 20. So it was pretty competitive there. I don't know that he has that many now, because at this point there are way more AP classes than there used to be, and they're getting to do the dual enrollment. I mean, that makes it harder. But he does get quality kids, we have the best kids in the school on yearbook usually. And they're the most responsible, and colleges look at that. I mean,
tell us about,
really
you said it's the 5th most significant indicator on an application. Talk about that.
Yeah, one of my advisors, she actually helps with college admissions in the town she's in. And she mentioned to me, she's like, yeah, we were in the meeting and they had a list of things that kind of give you extra points as far as if it's on the line of, oh, is this person gonna get in or not? And yearbook was in that, it was actually in the top 4, I believe. So it was like president of student body or your class, valedictorian, all these different things, like what was a responsible role? And editor-in-chief of the yearbook was one of those. And we started talking, and I said,
oh my word.
Of your editors, how many on average drop out of college? And she said, none, none. And I started thinking back, and I don't have many that have done that either. Maybe just a few in all the years I did it. And it was not because they meant to. Something else had happened that made them have to, or they changed majors or schools. But most of the time, your yearbook editors or even yearbook members are very responsible. They stick to their word. They do what they, say they set out to do, and they know how to hit deadlines. And you can't do that in college, not hitting deadlines. You're going to miss them.
So we're really recruiting today.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you're that kid, come to the yearbook, absolutely.
You mentioned earlier about a yearbook being a business. Go through that again about learning to sell and being on time, writing thank you notes, some of those things.
Well, unless it's a private school, most of my schools do not get any money from the school for a yearbook budget at all.
Right.
Which means that they have to raise it all from either sales of ads, fundraisers, or the books themselves. So I sit down with all my schools at the beginning of the year, and we do what we call a budget worksheet, and we figure out, here's what we want to do, here's how much money we need to do it, and then we have a mid-year review and decide that. But the big thing is ads. And so the kids typically go out into the world and try to get businesses to help them. And for me, I was very shy, and I know it's hard to believe that, but I would sit in the back of the room like, don't call on me, please. We was so shy. And yearbook really helped me come out of that, because I would have been a turtle at Carolina. I mean, it's so huge. I need to talk to you, and I'd have gotten lost. So it really helped to go in. But I try to come in and teach them, here's how to handle that, here's what to say. And how to get them to realize they're not just giving you money, they're actually getting something back. It's a marketing for them. So that is really helpful. Senior ads obviously help with the high school level, because the parent wants to honor their senior.
Sure.
In this area, that's kind of a tradition. Most of our schools, people want to do that, and it's a big thing. It's not true everywhere, which surprised me, because I'm from here, and I thought, doesn't everybody buy a senior ad? But that is a bulk of it, and then the book sales. There's different types of fundraisers. When I was doing it, we did everything from a car wash, we had a raffle, we had everything. But Dr. Brooks at West sells the little discount cards, and people get free books if they sell 10 or 12, they get a free book, and that brings the price down so everybody can have it. So it's really dependent on what the kids are willing to do and how hard they're willing to work to make their book good. And surprisingly, kids are pretty motivated. If they see a cover that they love and they know it's going to cost more, they go out and do it. I mean, and it's really incredible to watch, because I'll come back in and be like, oh, we've sold, let me tell you how many ads I've sold. I sold $900 last week. Or I'm like, wow, come travel with me. I need somebody to help. So it is. It's a lot of money. It's responsibility.
Brooke Smith, a top-rated yearbook. What are the attributes of it?
Well, I guess it depends on the scale you're wanting to look at. If you're just looking at it from student in the school's perspective, the first thing you want to see is yourself, right? So if you buy a book and you're not in it at all, that's pretty disappointing. So I try to get my schools to have everybody in there three times.
Okay.
At least.
At least.
So we have a coverage tool that when you go through and you tag and it keeps up with it for you. So I encourage my schools to print that out and look and say, who's on in here enough? Let's get them in, because if they get their book, and that's disappointing, and if they didn't, they'll probably buy one because they're in there. But you want it to be a well-rounded representation of the whole school and the whole year. And if it's not, if it's just the same popular kids over and over, it gets to be kind of boring. Now on a national level, if you're trying to do competitions, like some of my schools here and lots of my schools, as I told you as I was walking in, I had one win a Silver Crown this year, which is a huge
Silver
thing.
Crown.
And that's through Columbia University, the Scholastic Press, and I fed less than 50 in the country. So it's a really big deal. And that's what we're reaching for with West Wilkes now, and hopefully some of the other high schools will follow in the area. But that includes, coverage of everybody. You need to have those good stories, as we were talking about, that you've connected and you've written it eloquently, really quality pictures, on-edge design.
Photography.
It's really good.
You can do a class on, let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I teach online digital photography, which I've done for several years through another county, but that helps me to bring those skills into the yearbook, and I can help them like with their camera settings or what types of pictures. We don't want posed pictures. We want to catch everybody in their natural environment if we can, and get really nice angles, and it needs to just be striking. And really, yearbook has taken a turn to look more like magazines. There's mini stories, we call them mods now.
Mods?
Okay. So like I'll use Entertainment Weekly as an example. That's one of my favorite magazines. I get it and I'll read it, but here's the main story, and then over here they've got several things going on, where you can pop in and read and look at. And people just don't have long attention spans anymore. They don't want to read these huge long stories on every page. Now, yes, you need a few, but throughout, if you've got little mini stories, much easier to get kids in 3 times if you've got all that space, right? And then they're just little like surveys or just quotes or snippets or things that maybe you can't write a full story on, but you can still cover, and it gives it that magazine look, and that's kind of what they were looking for in those big competitions. So, and then the theme. You got to have a theme that pulls
Tell us
through.
now, theme, what does that mean?
So we try to pick a theme at the very beginning of the year, and I like for it to have something to do with that particular year and that particular school. So I was over on the other side of the state a couple of days ago, and they're building a brand new school at this school. I've gone through this when I was at West Wilkes about 12 years ago, but they were starting to build it right in the parking lot when I walked in, and they were going to tear down the old one. Well, that's the story. These kids are going to have to walk through this construction every day for the next 1.5 to 2 years. And I'm like, you guys got to do something with this, because that's this year. That's what you're going to remember, especially the seniors that graduate. Oh, my senior year, construction every day. I had to hear this, walk through it. But at the end of it, we got this beautiful school. So I, said maybe you could do like under construction or, in progress or something like that. But you want to pull that same feel. I like to take 3 things from whatever the cover is. It could be the color, the shape, the font, any of that graphic inside, so that it pulls to all those pages, like we said. But I really want it to be specific to this year. With it being 2020, that itself lends to several things. Because, obviously people think vision or perspective, so I got a lot of people thinking in that terms, but I don't want everybody to have the same theme. And that's one thing that's really good about having all the high schools here. I know no one's going to do the same theme.
Sure, well, that'd be a disaster.
Yeah, it would, and
me.
I know that going up front, okay, I can kind of sway them in a different way. But it is something that's really secretive, like they don't reveal it, and they kind of have what happens in yearbook stays in yearbook feel to it, and everybody's very protective of that theme and have a big reveal, but I know it. So if I go from one and then I come to the next and it's a real similar thing, I'll say, okay, somebody else in the county has something real similar, maybe we need to go in a different direction, than this, and
Right.
I can sway them, because that would be disappointing to work hard and it be.
This is, I want you to tell me how this works. A guy called me from the Surrey Community College Library, and he said, do you have some yearbooks, old yearbooks? Said, we want to send them to Chapel Hill to do something, record them.
Okay, like digitize or something.
Can you give us some ideas? Since I went to Little White Plains Elementary
Yeah.
School, and I had 2 of those, and I had 3 from Manor High School. Tell me what happened. They're back now, but what happened while they were gone? What were they doing?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would assume that they probably scanned those pages in just for perpetuity, so they would be there always.
Okay.
Because for research, maybe like microfiche, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But, you know, people don't really realize how important it is, but unfortunately the yearbook's the first thing they look at when something happens. You know, like if something happens bad,
Yeah.
they go and find that picture and they want to see it. And I actually was listening to a podcast because I'm driving all day, every day, pretty much. And it was about the Zodiac killer. And they were talking about how they had pulled the yearbook, which I'm going down the road going, they're talking about yearbooks on this podcast. It was funny. And she was like, oh yes, I cherish this yearbook because my daughter who was killed, this is a really beautiful picture of her. It's got all of her friends. And you know, here she is on this page. And I thought, exactly, yeah. I mean, you want to have that as a keepsake to remember. Unfortunately, people are not always going to be with us, but they may have done that so that they have it in case, you know, for
You're
history.
inspiring and interesting about your explanations, and I want to thank Wilkes Communications for this opportunity for me. This is, at this time in my life, there's nothing that could have meant it, that means any more to me than having this opportunity to meet new people like you and to
Thank
come in
you. I
here
appreciate it.
every other Wednesday, and RiverStreet Productions and WIFM. As we close, I want to know about September 24th.
Okay, awesome. Well, September 24th, I am going to launch a local workshop for my Wilkes schools. So I have 7 schools here now. And I think it's important that they know each other so they can help each other, because
Now, how many people will be there?
I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'm hoping, you know, at least 60 to 80 because the kids will come. So
Staffs now.
yes, this
Okay.
will be just Wilkes though.
Right.
I may try to get some prospects to come in and just see too, but the good thing will be, okay, the advisors get to meet each other, the kids get to meet each other, and then they're going to get trained on our online design program for the new kids that have never done it. And then my good friend Blaze Hayes, who's my former manager, he's now our training director, is going to come in, and he is very awesome guy. He's so hyper. He was a cheerleader at Carolina years ago. But he will do advanced design because he knows all about that. He's done it for 20 plus years, maybe even 30. And so he's going to do that, and then we'll also have an opportunity to design covers with an artist. So we'll have virtual cover sessions going in the back of the room, and they'll leave there, hopefully, if they haven't already done it at another workshop, you know, cover done, theme in place, we hope, and all their kids trained, and then made some connections around the county. So.
And you love what you do.
Oh,
Tell
absolutely.
us about that.
I do. It's an interesting job, and I'll tell you, my friend who is one of my good friends, we all talk to each other because nobody else is on the road during the day. So my best friends are the Nashville rep, my former Atlanta rep. She's left now, but I still talk to her, and then Tampa. And so my friend in Tampa, she was like, oh, I just got pulled over for speeding, but I didn't get a ticket. And she said, I told him I was trying to put in where I was going to the next school. And he was like, school? She goes, well, I'm a yearbook rep. And she said, he looked at me and said, a yearbook rep? What's a yearbook rep? I've never heard of that. And then he looked in her back seat and there's yearbooks everywhere. So he believed her. But she said, I think I got out of that ticket because he was so excited to meet somebody that did something he'd never heard of. But there's not many of us. There's only 4 of us in the state that work for this company. Well, 5 if you count Blaze, but it's really It's an interesting job. You get to work on the school schedule, make your own schedule, which is, is busy. We've had a hard time getting
It's a business, and it's about recruiting great talent.
It
and
is.
You have a great yearbook if you have great people.
Yeah, and the end result of it, that's what I love about it, is you end with a product that you can be proud of.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, all this work came to fruition, and it's really awesome. I love it.
So you have begin with the end in sight, kind of.
Oh,
We
yeah.
were talking about Stephen Covey here a while back, and so thank you for honoring us today, and
Thank you.
how blessed I am to have you here and to have you to accept this invitation. And we thank John Elledge, and I've been to his class, and I know. I just wish I had been more involved in my high school to have been a yearbook person.
Yeah.
I think I would, particularly in photography, I would have loved that.
Oh yeah, you've been great at it.
Gary York, and this is People Doing Good for Others. Brooke Smith, the representative for Allsworth Publishing Company. She handles all the high schools here in the county and works with the advisors. And if you have a youngster who, now I've learned it's an AP, what'd you say, AP?
There's honors credit for
Honors
editors.
credit
yes.
for being a yearbook person. So thank you for being with us today, and look forward to being with you the next time. So remember that people that are giving and sharing and caring like Ms. Smith to make a difference in the lives of others. Thank you very much.